Hi guys, my name is Valerie Tovar. I am the Conservation Field Assistant here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center. Welcome to the Conservation Podcast called Sorting It Out. With me today I have Marilu Flores, who is the Regional Manager for the Surfrider Foundation for Florida and Puerto Rico. The Surfrider Foundation is dedicated to protecting the world's waves, oceans, and beaches for all people. So Marilu, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you've done and what you have done to get to where you're at now?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Mucho gusto estar con ustedes hoy. So I actually started as a filmmaker many years ago, and I wasn't doing anything related to the ocean, but I was always really passionate about the ocean. And I guess like 15 years ago now, I started volunteering with the Surfrider Foundation. And I feel like I just really found my people, like people who got me and understood what was happening in the world and had good solutions for tackling those issues, especially being like a novice and someone who didn't have a marine science background or anything like that. So I started engaging with them as an activist and as a volunteer, and just really grew to really understand a lot of the issues that are facing our oceans. So everything from plastic pollution to obviously oil spills and some of the very catastrophic things that we're dealing with in regards to climate change as well, ocean level rise. And from there, I went 10 years as a volunteer to being offered a staff position with Surfrider. And it's been honestly an incredible gift to get to do what I love every day, right? And is just teaching activists how to engage with their locally elected officials to enact change in their communities, but also to understand these very complex issues that are affecting us on a global level and on a local level.
So one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on the show is because LMC is participating in Hispanic Heritage Month for the very first time, and we thought it would be absolutely amazing to have you come in because you've done such amazing work so far. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to be a Latina in this field and of marine science and of activism work? Because it's hard and it's an awesome opportunity as well. But what does it mean to you to be a Latina in this field?
I mean, estoy muy orgullosa de ser una Latina en este giro because it can be very challenging to be a minority in the field of ocean conservation. I'm also not an advanced degree marine conservationist, so I don't have a PhD and I don't have a master's level education in what I do. So that also kind of adds a layer of challenge to the work that you're trying to do. But what I have found is one of the biggest challenges that we have in general in science is science communication. And I think that because of my previous background and because I have this ability to like story tell, and I do come from this culture that has always been very passionate about ocean and the ocean conservation, being Caribeña. So these things kind of started to make sense naturally to me to like, no, the more I put myself out there as a Caribeña, the more I tell my story, the more I engage with my community, we start to kind of chip away at some of the challenges that we faced, right? So it's like, you don't have to be a PhD level marine scientist to make an impact in your community or on the issues that are facing ocean conservation. You can do them even if that's just something that you do on your off time, as a volunteer or, as just a person in your community. And so I think that it's allowed me, my culture and the importance of the ocean in my culture has given me an interesting viewpoint on how to tackle some of the issues we face.
Awesome, that's amazing. It's really nice to get to speak to you because I feel like in a way I can look up to you, and I feel like that's the point of all of this is trying to get people to have those influencers and those people to look up to and those scientists to look up to. So do you have a specific moment or a specific person or anything like that inspired you to do this work?
That's a really great question. I mean, I think that as a former filmmaker, somebody that, has always been impassioned by the art of filmmaking or filmmaking as a storytelling device, I'd be amiss if I said Jacques Cousteau. Obviously, it wasn't a huge impact on my life and what I want to do. I have a cat named Jacques Cousteau, but also Thor Heyerdahl, who was also a ethnographer and filmmaker, and his story on Fatu Hiva and kind of what he was trying to capture about, a time gone by. I think it's actually very relevant to ocean conservation, just because of how our relationship with the ocean has changed throughout generations, whereas one point in time, it was a source of everything. If you lived in an island community, now we have big barges that bring us everything that we need in a cargo boat, and our relationship with the ocean has changed, even though in many ways it hasn't, because if the ocean doesn't allow it, that cargo boat isn't going to come through. But I think that those would be two individuals that I never had an opportunity to meet, but their writings and their films left a lot for me to kind of look up to.
What gives you hope and drive to continue in this work? Because I feel like oftentimes, at LMC, at any facility that you can work at, you can run into obstacles and you can run into things that sometimes might feel like a wall, or you just might get burnt out. So what's something, if it's anything, or what keeps you, or what continue to give you your drive and the hope to continue doing everything that you do?
I think the hope that I find hope in the fact that we are making new discoveries every day as to the resilience of our ocean environments and the animals that live in it. I think that, the media can really paint the issues facing our ocean and environments a certain way, and it can be very demoralizing and just inspiration sucking, right? And I think that it's important to realize that, regardless of what happens, eventually the ocean will find a way. The ocean will continue. It's really more us that we should be fearful for, not so much the ocean and the animals in it. And so I think that I find hope in knowing that facilities like LMC exist that have such a outward-facing public component where we can educate young people and old people as to the issues that are facing our communities and our coastal communities. But I think that the most important thing is that we can't lose hope.
Yeah.
If you lose hope, then there's no purpose in waking up in the morning and doing the difficult work that we often do. And so I think that our communities and our youth look up to us to continue to be those beacons, and we owe it to them, right? Yeah. So I think that's the most important thing, is don't lose hope. Life is going to find a way. The ocean is going to find a way. That's not to say that there are going to be some losses along the way, but we'll have some new discoveries as well, and new animals that may even come from this horrific crisis that we're facing right now.
Yeah. What is one thing that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Use less plastic.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
I was really, really ignorant as to the impact of my personal use of single-use plastics up until a few years ago. I had no idea. We grew up in a culture where you actually have a lot of reusables, and then at some point in the mid-90s, it became cool to have bottled water, and then this very bizarre status symbol almost, that you had bottled water at your event or at your party or whatever it may be. And so I definitely perpetuated some of that in my old habits. But I think also, if I could tell my younger self something, is don't be so hard on yourself. Every day is a new opportunity to bring education and change and enlightenment, right? And so, I can't change the habits of my past. I can't change some of the decisions that I made then, but I can change the decision I'm going to make for tomorrow. And so it's just kind of keeping that focus, is that, even if I'm not perfect in my consumption of single-use plastics, is I'm mindful of it and I'm trying to enact change.
Yeah, and I think a lot with, like how you mentioned, it's a very big cultural thing, right? Like, unfortunately, like my mom, who I work in this field, sometimes I'll open her cupboard, I'm like, why the styrofoam? Why the cups? And it's just a cultural thing, unfortunately. And so with that, what's one of the biggest challenges that you have faced, with trying to connect with the Hispanic community, and have you come up with ways to kind of trying to, combat those issues?
Yeah. Latinos love plastic bags.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about Abuelita and her cupboard full of plastic bags, but it's an interesting thing, because I feel specifically in South Florida, a lot of us are Caribbean folk. We come from island nations, and I think that the biggest challenge that I've seen in studying some of the plastic consumption use habits of these countries is that they don't have the infrastructure in place to make better decisions into how to properly dispose of that plastic. They go to landfills, or even barges off of their coasts that are not properly secured. The trash just sits there. We have hurricanes, we have storms, we have all sorts of scenarios. And so when they come into the United States or emigrate elsewhere, like Europe, for example, it's a big culture shock, and it's one more thing to add into, I hate to say the word assimilation, right? But it's like you have to, to a certain degree, give up a percentage of your culture and your heritage to assimilate into your new home. And so I feel like there is actually a strange disconnect with, it's one more thing that I have to do, you know, the proper recycling techniques and things like that, because they don't have those facilities available where they come from. So it's not something that's in their mindset. So I think that it's up to us to do a better job, and our elected officials to do a better job of letting folks know, you know, how to properly recycle, the importance of recycling. And that's not to say, by the way, that I believe that recycling is going to get us out of this mess, because it's not. You know, we do have to ultimately hold manufacturers to the weight of the product that they're putting out there, and not so much consumers. But we can still do our part. So I think that, you know, communicating issues to Latinos is really just a question of having them see the direct impact. You know, when you show them pictures of Fiji and Hawaii and Palau and, you know, Malaysia or wherever it may be, these feel like very far away places, and they can't connect with all of the other things that they're already trying to do to connect to their new homeland. So we have to have better tools to show them how, you know, this plastic pollution mess is deriving from their country, how it's impacting their country, and ultimately impacting their lives in their new country, because it's kind of a vicious circle right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think you couldn't have said it any better, honestly. I think, you know, just like how you mentioned, just reaching those communities and education, and also having people like yourself almost look as, it's just having Latino people in the field, and also reaching those audiences is important, and inclusivity, right? Like, I think one of the biggest things that I've also seen is, especially in this field, like I live in Lake Worth, which is an area filled with many Latino people, and it's a lot of working people as well. And I think one of the biggest challenges I've come to find is not everyone necessarily cares about, unfortunately, conservation when they have to figure out how to get food to the table, how to get X, Y, and Z things to their homes. And so I feel like having people that are in our field and just showing them simple things that can be done. And I know sometimes individual action doesn't seem big, but small changes and those inspirational things can really sometimes make an impact, especially in communities like that. So.
Absolutely, and I feel that, you know, as a peninsula and individual coastal communities within our state, we do have a certain responsibility about educating our residents as to the importance of certain habits, right? Because they may be coming from somewhere else where those habits don't exist. They don't have to think about them. So I think that's something we can all do to work together to just better put information out there and educate our community and make decisions as a community.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last question that I have for you is just very, I guess can be very broad, but just what's one thing that, you know, someone can do right now, right after they watch this, to make a change and to make an impact and to get involved?
I think the most important thing that folks need to do, just for any aspect of their life, not just marine conservation, is get to know your elected officials. Find out who represents you on a local level, whether it's a city, a town, or municipality, or, you know, on the Senate level, or as a representative on the state and legislative level, because these are the people that, you know, have been voted into office to be your voice. But if they don't understand what concerns you have, whether it's coastal pollution and, you know, construction or whatever it may be, or even, you know, access to care in your community, or, you know, workers' rights, if they don't know that these are the things that are troubling you as a constituent, they can't be your voice in Tallahassee or Washington, D.C. or in town hall. So if that's the one takeaway, is that we all have a lot of power as individuals, and it's important for us to hold the elected in our communities to understand that we have that power.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today. It was an absolute honor and pleasure getting to know you and speaking to you today. Again, this is Marilu Flores with the Surfrider Foundation. And again, thank you so much for everything. I'm so happy that you came in.
Muchísimas gracias.
No,
mucho
gracias a
gusto.
ti. Gracias, muy amable.